You hear it all the time, right? AI hallucinates. And the common thinking is that, well, it's just a bug. It's something that'll get patched in the next update, and eventually this problem will just go away. But what if that whole idea is completely, fundamentally wrong? Okay, let's really get into this.
Here's a thought that might change how you see everything. AI doesn't actually hallucinate at all. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. And once you really understand why that's true, you'll realize these so-called hallucinations, they can't be stopped. They can only be managed.
So, first things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What we call an AI hallucination is when a model just makes stuff up, but presents it with absolute confidence. It invents legal cases that never happened, it cites research papers that are completely fake, or it gets a basic historical detail totally wrong. It's when false information is served up as fact. And it makes perfect sense why we use the word hallucination, right? We're seeing it through a human lens. When we get a fact wrong, it's a mental glitch. We misremembered or we were confused. Maybe we even lied. But for an AI, it's not a glitch. As you can see here, it's a direct result of its core function, probabilistic pattern matching. It's not a bug, it's a feature of the architecture.
And honestly, the big AI companies don't really help clear this up. You always hear them say things like, "We're working hard to reduce hallucinations," or "Our new model is 30% better." This language makes it sound like a leaky faucet they're just going to tighten up in the next version. Like it's a flaw that's just going to be engineered away. That is a really dangerous assumption to make.
So here's the uncomfortable truth, the core idea we have to grapple with. Hallucinations aren't bugs, they're features. Now, wait a minute. I don't mean they're a good thing or a desirable feature. I mean they are an inevitable, baked-in consequence of how these AI systems are fundamentally built. And to really get that, we need to pop the hood. It really all boils down to these three key ideas. Let's start with the first one, which is maybe the biggest misconception out there. AI doesn't store facts. There's no little database or encyclopedia inside of it. Instead, it's learned statistical patterns from a mind-boggling amount of text. It knows that Paris is the word that usually follows the capital of France is not because it knows that as a fact, but because it's seen that pattern millions and millions of times. It's a pure association engine. And that leads directly to the second point. AI works by generating text probabilistically. It's always just predicting the most likely next word. For common topics, like the capital of France, that works beautifully. But when you ask it about something more obscure, it still has to predict something. So it starts weaving together plausible-sounding sentences based on weaker patterns, an answer that looks and feels correct, but might be entirely fabricated. Probably the best way to think about this is with an analogy. A large language model isn't an encyclopedia. It's the world's best improv actor. Seriously, what's an improv actor's job? It's not to be factually correct. It's to be plausible, to be creative, to keep the scene going no matter what. They can't just stop and say, "I don't know." Their job is to perform. And this is exactly where we get tripped up. We keep treating the AI like an encyclopedia, expecting it to retrieve static, verifiable, factual information. But what we're actually interacting with is that improv actor, something that's creative, plausible, fluent, and generates everything in real time. It's built for fluency, not for fact-checking. And that brings us to our third point, which is what makes these hallucinations so darn tricky. The AI's confidence has nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with factual truth. Its confidence is simply a measure of how well its answer matches the statistical patterns it learned. So if it invents a fake legal case, but it uses all the right legal jargon and sentence structures, the model's math says, "Hey, this looks great, high probability." And it delivers that made-up answer with complete conviction. Now, of course, companies are trying to rein this in. They use cleaner training data, they use reinforcement learning to kind of punish wrong answers, and they use techniques like retrieval-augmented generation, or RAG, which is like giving the AI an open book test where it can look up facts from a trusted source. And these things can absolutely reduce how often hallucinations happen, but they can't eliminate them without fundamentally breaking the creative, predictive core of the model. What this all points to is a fundamental trade-off at the very heart of today's AI. We're faced with the choice. Do you want fluency and creativity, or do you want perfect, rigid accuracy? With the current way these models are built, we've essentially chosen fluency. The very thing that lets an AI brainstorm a marketing slogan or write a poem is the exact same thing that allows it to invent things out of thin air. They're two sides of the very same coin. So why does all this matter in the real world?
Well, it's absolutely critical for anyone, especially in business, who is planning to deploy AI. If your strategy is built on the assumption that hallucinations are a bug that will one day be fixed, you are planning for a future that isn't coming. Instead, you have to build a strategy to manage the inevitable. So, how do you do that? First, treat AI like a brilliant but very junior employee. Amazing for a first draft, but their work always needs to be checked. Second, design your workflows with human verification built right in. Third, for high-stakes tasks that demand accuracy, use a technique like RAG to ground the AI in your company's real data. Fourth, and this is a big one, educate your team. Make sure they know that an AI's confidence means nothing about its accuracy. And finally, just use the right tool for the job. Use general-purpose AI for creativity, and use specialized systems when facts are critical.
So the bottom line is really simple. AI hallucinates because it is a prediction engine, not a fact retrieval system. Its entire purpose is to generate plausible text. And sometimes plausible just isn't the same thing as true. This isn't going away in GPT-5 or even GPT-10. It is part of the core architecture.
And that means we really have to stop asking, when will AI be perfect? That's the wrong question. A much better question, a much more useful question is this. Is my workflow smart enough to get the best out of an imperfect AI? Because that is the reality we have to build for, starting right now.